Hello lovely people, I'm Kathryn and welcome to this week's coverlet of comfort, and welcome to June. So this is a whole new prompt for this month, and the theme will be, drumroll please, you've already seen it on the thumbnail of course, Fantastic Flora. So last month we did fauna, this month quite logically really we're doing flora, so flowers. If you don't like flowers you can do leaves or trees or plants of any kind. If you don't like plants, well I'm sure you like plants. Sorry, I'm wobbling you about. I'm trying to keep the background just my nice curtain and not the glary window. June is also my birthday month, so I thought it would be nice to send myself some flowers in the form of this month's block. So we're going to use applique, and yes that is how I say it if you're across the pond and you say applique. But we're not going to, well I'm not going to do scary needle turn or precise with templates. I'm going to do it very raggedy and raw edge. You obviously are free as always to do you. If you like to do needle turn applique then you can do that, but I'm going to do it, my way. I'm not going to burst into song. So without further ado, first of all I'm going to, I keep saying without further ado at the moment, I don't know why. Anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of handheld on my desk and show you the placement, because last month's two animal blocks are going to go either side of this month's block for me. You might have done it differently, but I just want to show you how I'm going to work out what size I want this month's block to be. So you'll see that first and then we'll get onto my desk and we'll get going. Okay, I'm going to try and show you handheld. It's getting to the stage where I'm going to have to do this on the floor at one point, but since my floor needs hoovering, that's not today. So what I've done is I've got, I hope you can see, I've got my coverlet laid out with the edge that I want to sew my two panels to, and I've pinned them roughly in place. And I'm doing this because I think I know what size mine are because I measured at the beginning of last month, but just in case you don't know, or the size might have changed with your stitching or whatever. So you could measure and do a sum, but I much prefer to pin them, lay them in place and measure what's there. I find I'm much less likely to make a miscalculation doing it like that. Of course with this way of working you can always sew something over or trim bits off, but anyway, just to do our best. So what I'm going to do is I want my piece for June to fit that gap, because I'm having Stella Bear at the top and Fred at the bottom. He's there by the ruler. So my piece for June will be the same width as those two, and with my third hand so that is 12 inches. Now that is the size of the top piece of cloth including the seam allowances. So I want my piece for June to be 12 inches wide that way, and then I want it to fit this gap, so I want it to be, if I lay that on there, you see it, the gap is 12 inches that way, but I need an overlap, so I'm going to add 2 inches, an inch each side, so that's 14 inches. So I hope that's clear. So just to recap, I want my background cloth for June to be 12 inches wide by 14 inches high as you look at it. So that's my background cloth, and then my backing cloth I always like to do that an inch bigger again. So 12 by 14 for the background cloth, and then for the old sheet on the back that would then be 14 by 16. That's plenty, that's too much, but that's just what I like to do. So just keep those numbers in my head. So I need my top cloth to be 12 by 14 and I can work the rest out from there. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So obviously yours will be different depending on how you're assembling it, what size it is and so on, but I hope that makes it clear enough that you can work out what size background piece you need for June. So let's get on to it. Okay, before I get into the applique, I just wanted to show you my finished fauna from last month. So I did a little darn on Fred and two little patches, you can see them, and then on Stella Bear, who's gone sideways, I did three little darns. That was the one I did with you, and then I did another one here and a tiny one down here, and then I did 2 little patches, and I obviously did the quilting stitch on that as well. So yeah, so that's those all done. So for the flowers, for my flora, I'm going to, so this is my piece. Now you could do many different things. You know, you can do whatever you think of yourself on the theme of flowers. You're absolutely free, as always, to do you. I'm going to do, I think, just a random freeform florally thing, because that's what I feel like doing. You could, if you wanted to, do a vase or a jug with the applique. I'm sure you can, if you can't draw one, I'm sure you can find a template online somewhere to draw around, and then do some flowers up here. And then later, you know, later in the month we're going to add stitching and all kinds of other fancy stuff. So in that case you might want to plan a little bit. Obviously always make sure you leave your, you know, ½ inch or an inch or so, whatever, around the edge. But you could do your jug or your vase to get your placement, and then put some flowers up here if that was what you fancied doing. Or if you didn't fancy a jug or a vase, you could just do flowers up here and anticipate bringing the stems down here, and then maybe putting a ribbon, sewing a ribbon on or something, so it was like a bouquet. That was another idea that I had. You could also do a wreath, so you could draw a circle on your cloth and then do your little tiny flowers and leaves all around, you know, and stitch your wreath and so on. So do a combination of embroidery and applique that way. But I feel like doing freeform, I think because of my Kathryn inspired Stella and Fred. I'm not going with Kathryn for this, but I just think a sort of folk arty feel will go with. That's my feeling. That sounded like a chicken outside. There's no chickens here. Anyway, sorry, distracted. So I've chosen some scraps. Now my favourite flowers in my garden are kind of pinky purples, blues, that kind of palette. So those are the colours that I've chosen. So I've just pulled some little scraps. Well, that's quite a big scrap of those colours. In fact, that's a smaller scrap of that same one. And I've also got some greens for my leaves. And I've got them all here in my handy dandy bowl that I made with you on Friday. Thank you so much for your response to that video. I think you all liked it. And I'm looking forward to seeing in the Facebook group. It's possible they are there already, but I'm filming ahead because it's my birthday week. I didn't want that bit of red. But anyway, you get the idea. I've got some little scraps. So to get your well, you can either make yourself templates, so draw them on paper and then use them, you know, pin them onto your cloth and cut round them. If you're into freezer paper and all that stuff, then you can do that. If you're into fusible applique, you can do that. I'm not going to do that because I just don't use all that stuff anymore, but I'm sure that you know, if you do that then you'll know how to do it. Otherwise you'll have to Google. I'm just going to do it really free and organic. So I'm just going to probably just cut my shapes freeform out of my cloth directly. But if you wanted to, if you Google flower petal templates or leaf templates, again you'll get 5 billion of them. But I've just drawn on here some basic shapes. Where's my pencil? So for petals, obviously this is a kind of classic petal shaped, or you could do it like a bit like a heart, or you could do with a more of an oval, or with a pointy top, or elongate it, or do it with this indentation. These obviously will carry on down in the same shape everywhere, I just haven't drawn them all in. Or this kind of shape. You could do a little notched petal, or a petal with a little extra bit, or make the extra bit a point. You get the idea. So you could have a little doodle on a bit of paper and see what shapes you find pleasing. Now here are some leaf shapes. Look at my maple leaf. Many apologies, especially to those of you in Canada. That's the most rubbish maple leaf you've ever seen in your life. You know what a maple leaf looks like, and it doesn't really look like that. So maple leaves aren't really on flowers, but you know, it's just an oak leaves also, you know how they are. I shouldn't really embarrass myself by attempting to draw an oak leaf. Yeah, that wasn't bad. But most flower leaf shapes are somewhere like this kind of, you know, a leaf. Or I wouldn't get into those really frilly ones just because they'll be a nightmare to stitch on, but if you want to do that you can. I'm just gonna, I think, just go with generic leaf shapes, and maybe some of these sort of upside down heart type ones. We'll see. So you could of course draw all your templates, cut them out and then use them, like I said, to cut your shapes out. Or you could do what I'm going to do and just cut the shapes out of scraps and not mind if they're all different sizes and shapes probably. So I've got it portrait because that's the way up it's going to be in my thing, but actually that doesn't matter. I'm actually going to turn it because it fits better, I think, under the thing. Yes, there we go. So there's another way, and I did have a little go, which I came across when I was Googling, you know, the places where you can find templates, from making paper flowers. And I just tried it with a piece of cloth and it works. I made this little flower. So I'll show you how I did it. I expect you already know. I think I seem to remember doing it at school even. Let's get a bit of something something. So you need a square to start with. Now I would say quite thin cloth and very sharp scissors are essential. So I'm going to get a square. That's going to be way too big. I'm going to make a square. I don't want my flowers to be too enormous because I want a few of them on here. So I'm going to go for about a 3-inch square by eye, tear it. And then I'm going to get my square in my usual way of folding on the diagonal, like so. Snipping there, being careful not to snip through my background. Oh, I didn't say, I was assuming you remembered from last month. All I've done is based my background cloth to my backing cloth using the invisible baste. Same as we did last month. Sorry, should have mentioned that in case you're new here. Because again, if you're new here and you think, oh, I don't want to make a whole coverlet and, you know, I'm way behind where this is a halfway point, you could absolutely do a patch like this, you know, a piece like this, and turn it into something else, a bag, a cushion, whatever. Right, so now I've got my square. I'll keep this here because it's easier for you to see against this, I think. And then you fold it on the diagonal once, and then you fold it on the diagonal again. So that makes 2 folds. And now you want to fold it on the diagonal once more. Now I think it's actually easier to fold this top bit towards you and match it up as best you can, and then fold the other bit away from you. It just seems to sit better that way. So you've got it all, you know, it's not perfect, but it's matched up as well as I can. And now what you do is you cut, it's like making paper dolls or snowflakes or anything like that. You cut a petal shape from here. This is going to be your centre. So if we go back to our brilliantly drawn petal shapes, it's probably best to stick to something relatively simple. Well, let's try this one, this triangle-y one. You could draw it on first if you wanted to, but I don't want to let it go. So I'm just going to cut my triangle there and there. I'm going to hold all the layers, keep pinching the layers as I cut because they'll want to move. Turn it round and then cut back the other way. And then by magic you've got a little star-shaped flower. Quite a big star-shaped flower. I think that looks more like a star than a flower. I think I'm happier with this one, but you get the idea. So you could do it like that. That's going to chime 12 again. I keep filming at 12 or thereabouts. Apologies. Or you could, and I think I like it better really as an idea, just get some, and this will use your tiny scraps. So I think I want a 5-petaled flower because one of my favourite flowers is a hardy geranium and they have 5 petals. So I'm going to get 5 bits of purple. That's nice, that bit of with gold in. Maybe that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe that's a bit pink now. Maybe that instead. And just cut. I'm going to take my smallest one and I'm just going to cut a petal shape out of this little scrap. Maybe the sort of, actually I'm going to put a tiny indentation in the top because geraniums do have that. go. Oops, sorry for the clang. So there's one that's like an elongated heart, and now I can use this as a template to cut my other ones, and then they'll be somewhere in the region of the right shape, you know, as near as I'm bothered about. This has got all kinds of patterns, so I'm going to make sure it's where I want it. You could of course put a little pin to hold it if you want to. Really sharp scissors are the key. I've got my Sharpies, my snippies. And I'm pinching at the edge where I'm cutting. So that it, you know, it sort of stays together. And they're not going to be perfect, but I'm not really bothered, like I said, but it will get them roughly the same size and shape. I need a bowl for my tiny scraps. I'll just put them up there for now. And now I'll keep using that first one as the template. There I've done a little point. I'll just trim that little point off. I'll keep using that first one as a template, because if you use the next one as a template, if you've cut this slightly bigger, for example, and then you use that to cut the next one, you're more likely to cut it slightly bigger because you're trying to stay away from the edge. They'll get progressively bigger. So by your fifth one, it'll be significantly bigger, if that makes sense. So if you use the same one all the time, that's less likely to happen. I hope that was clear. So same here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 5 out. I don't think you need to watch me do all that. Okay, so I've cut out my 5 very wibbly wonky petals. And now again, this would depend on you and how much planning you like to do. You could go ahead and cut out lots of petals and leaves and so on, and get all your placement and pin them all on, and then go ahead and start stitching them down. Or I think what I'm going to do is just stitch this one on and then make another one, and you know, see where I go from there. But that's obviously up to you. Or you could lay them all out and take a picture and then get them off and stitch them on one at a time. You know, you can do it that way as well. So I'm going to, I think, thinking, you know now, because I told you, when I say that it means I'm thinking, I don't yet know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to pin them with my little applique pins, because that's what they're for. I'm going to just, I think I might just let them all overlap in the middle, because I'll probably put something else later in the month. So I'm just going to get them all how I want them. It's pretty. I do like it. I should turn that one over, which means it's curling a different way. And now I'm going to put my applique pins in. Just one on each will do the job. Now of course, if you want to do needle turn, I'm going to turn, I hope it doesn't make you dizzy. If you don't want to do needle turn, you need to cut your pieces bigger to allow for the little hem to turn under. Years ago I used to do a lot of needle turn. I made a lot of Baltimore album blocks. That's another thing you could look up for inspiration. I mean, you can look up folk art if this is the look you like, but if you look up applique quilt blocks, even if you're not a quilter, you can take inspiration from the layouts and the, you know, the shapes that they use in Baltimore album quilts, for example. But I just felt like keeping it simple, so I'm just doing this kind of mostly out of my head. So like I said, I'm not worrying about the middle, because that's going to get something over it. And more, you can even kind of put your finger over it and make sure you're happy with the spacing and, you know, all that kind of thing, which I am. If you had thicker cloths and they're really bulky, you might want to trim some of that away, but I think mine are okay. You know, some of the middle that's going to get covered, because potentially I've got 5 layers plus my 2 layers that I already had. There we go. So now you've done that, you can go ahead and do whatever stitching it is you want to do to hold them down directly with the pins there, but I don't like to work with the pins there, so I am going to just take the time just to tack them down with some normal sewing cotton. There's my lovely sharp needle that Jenny sent me. it's got cream in from when I was doing the background. So I'm just going to come up somewhere here. I'm about maybe 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. I'm going to come up through his point because he's not ironed. And I'm just going to, could probably get a few of them under there at the same time if I'd thought about it, but it doesn't matter. With one stitch, like that. So I'm just going to go maybe 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And I'm being a little bit gentle because they're raw edges, but it's raw edge applique, so you're bound to get fraying. It's just the nature of the beast. It shouldn't be too bad for the most part with these curvy shapes because you're on, you know, on some kind of bias. It's here and there where you're, you know, where you've cut along the straight where it's more likely to fray. But so I'm just going to do that all the way around, and I'm just going to go around every petal like that, taking the pins out as I go. Okay, so I've tacked that on. You could, of course, also now just go ahead and put all your others in place and just tack them all on with the invisible base like that. I'll just show you the back. See, I just literally went roughly around each petal. Because then if you decided you wanted to make adjustments, you've only got your tacking to pull out, so that's another possibility. And probably I'd do that if I was, you know, just working on my own. But I want to show you how I'm going to stitch them on, and I want to maybe put a couple of leaves on and maybe another flower. We'll see where we get. So yeah, I'm going to do it as I go, if that makes sense. So there's different things you could do. You could, of course, just do a running stitch 1/8 of an inch in from the edge and let the edge just do what it will. So it will fray, but only up to the stitching. I would then do quite small stitches. You could do a blanket stitch around, that would be very folk arty. I think I might just do a simple overcast stitch. So I'm going to start here. I've got 2 strands of embroidery floss, this kind of lilac-y, somewhat matching colour. You could, of course, do contrasting colours, you know, whatever. The world's your oyster. So I'm going to start in right down in here, anticipating that I'm going to cover this messy middle. So I'm just off the edge of the patch. I'm just in the background cloth. And now I need to go this way, because I'm right-handed, just remembered. So then I do this, instead of, I do it like I couch basically. So I come over onto the patch and I'm going to go tiny, 1/8 of an inch maybe, and then take a tiny stitch forward, because I just think it then makes my stitches straighter. And I just like the rhythm of it more. So then I come onto off the edge of the patch into the cloth, and then a tiny stitch forward. So it's exactly this. It's couching, only instead of going completely over, I'm going into the patch. It's couching the way I do it, and that way my little stitches around the edge are straight, rather than going in and coming up into the patch, if that makes sense. Which is the way you see lots of people doing it. I've got to be different. So the action that I'm taking is the same as running stitch, but I'm taking kind of 2 parallel lines of running stitch at the same time. I'm probably confusing you saying that, but on the back you'll just see 2 lines of running stitch. I'll show you when I've got round this petal. And I started in the centre obviously because now I can just go around the whole flower without breaking my thread. And I'm kind of trying to get them even, but I'm not really stressing about it. And this way, because I'm overcasting the edge, the fraying's pretty much controlled if it was a bother. If you did blanket stitch, of course, it would be completely controlled because you'd have that extra little bar of thread laying against the edge. And right back in the beginning of when I first got into more complex patchwork and quilting rather than just English paper piecing, which I did for years and years since I was a child, I first learnt needle turn applique, and I was never, it requires great precision to get a really good result. For me, you know, a result that I was happy with. I required it because it felt like something super precise. I required it to look super precise, and I just found it very stressful, and I was never very happy with the results that I got. So I didn't enjoy it. So then I went over to doing fusible applique, and I didn't really like stitching through the bonder web stuff. If you are someone that wants to do fusible, there's a product called Misty Fuse that doesn't have a backing, which is much softer for hand stitching. I've used that in the past, and I think Rita uses it, Rita at Gone Rustic. But I just don't buy that kind of stuff anymore, so I just do it like this. I don't find the fraying a problem. Because the Bonder Web or Misty Fuse, that kind of product, one, it sticks it down so you can stitch it. You don't have to mess about pinning and basting, you just iron it on. Although I like messing about pinning and basting because it's a process. But the other thing is, because it's an adhesive, it glues all the fibres together so the edges don't fray. But yeah, it's just, I'd rather just do it like this, but each to their own. So I'm going to turn, ready for the next one. I'll just take my last stitch. Probably don't really need to, that'll probably be covered by the centre. And then just bring my needle up into position and just go around the next one in the same way. And you get the idea. Okay, that's all stitched on all the way around. The middle, like I said, is not too worried about because it's going to get covered up with something something. And I'll just show you on the back, you see you get these two little lines of running stitches from stitching in that way. So, you know, the basting's a bit ugly, if you wanted to call it ugly, but that stitching on the back, I really like the look of it. So let's do a few more, or at least part of a few more. So this week, basically, this is all I'm going to do is stitch on the petals and the leaves, and then next week I'll start doing the further embellishing. So I've cut out a couple of leaf shapes while I was waiting for my battery to charge a bit because it was getting a bit low. In exactly the same way, I just cut one first freehand and used it as a template to cut the other one. And then I've done, I thought I might have them kind of up towards a corner, obviously keeping away from my joining part, my joining excess. I thought it might be cute to do that. Maybe bring them down a bit. And then I cut this exactly the same way that I showed you these, only this was a tiny, it was from this. So it was, what, 1.5 inches maybe, square. So it was a bit fiddly, but it's very fine cloth, so it did work. I mean, it's a bit plain at the moment, but it will be embellished. So you could either put that there like a little thing, or I could put that up there, and then later on stitch a stem to join it together. I think I might do the latter, and, you know, put a stem on it later. So I can stitch those on. I'll just pin them, because I'm going to do them exactly the same way that I've shown you with the purple ones. I might stitch a leaf with you because there's a way of treating points when you stitch that I just want to show you. I'll just pin those in place for now. Okay, so another way to cut your shapes, and I'm sure you'll know how to do this. I thought I'd have some kind of heart-shaped petals, so I'm going to fold this. You see I've already done it down there. Fold this in half and then cut out half a heart. Like so, there's a little heart, and then I'm going to cut a few more and make those my petals. Seems we're going with blue. Let's have a bit of this. I think I want it where there isn't it was a batik with some fish on, but I think I want this bit here where there's no fish. Just the blue. So with this time I could lay this on and cut round it, but I'm going to keep it folded and then place the fold on the fold. And it's super small and fiddly, so it's entirely up to you if you feel like doing this or not. Stella just went out because she heard one of my neighbour's voices, and it's a neighbour that she especially loves. Hello. Yes, no, don't do that when I'm doing finicky cutting. Go down, there's a good girl. I know, I heard her. She's pawing at my arm. Now my heart's gone wonky. Let's see if it's still usable or not. Actually, quite like that. Stella, that was a happy accident. Thank you for your help. I think I'm going to go with that, but I'm just going to indent that shape a bit more. And do that to that one. So yeah, fiddle about, make yourself some petal shapes. Let someone knock your arm. Just cut that corner off. Does that look vaguely the same? This is kind of like a forget-me-not, I guess. Forget-me-not. Sorry, my voice went. Maybe some of this. I don't mind if it's on the bias or on the straight of grain or wherever. It's a really strange shaped scrap. I'm just trying to find a part that's big enough. Let's use this one. You make a big pile of mess doing this, which I'll sort out afterwards. How's that one looking? Not too bad. Bit wonky. Yeah, I think if I did 4 of these, so I think I just want a 4th one. There we go, so I need to fiddle about with that and get the spacing in between the petals somewhat even, because that's the kind of thing that would annoy me. So, but that's another kind of flower shape. So I'll do that later, I won't pin those on now. Again, I wouldn't worry about the middle because of, you know, further embellishments. So let me just show you with the leaf. Let's just find something green. Move my mess to the side. I used 2 strands, by the way, because I wanted it to show. If you didn't want it to show as much, then you can obviously just use 1 strand or use something neutral. I got 2 strands off there at the same time. I'll just try and flatten them out a bit with my thumbnail. But yeah, like I said, I'm going for the folk arty look, so I wanted mine to show that's not the right needle, that's one of the fine needles. So I haven't basted them on, but I'll just work with the pin for now. Right, so I'm going to do exactly the same as before, but I'm going to start a little bit along because I want to come back round to the point in a minute. So I don't think these points will be covered by anything, so I want them to look reasonable. Obviously this top point will always be uncovered, so same thing as before, just a little, oh dear, what's happened now? It's alright. Just the little 8ths, it's because I pulled off 2 strands, so it's all twisty. That'll serve me right. That's why it's always better to separate your strands and recombine them. They lay much flatter. So just the same thing as before, your little 1/8 of an inch stitches, or thereabouts, you know, whatever makes you happy. 1/8 of an inch is not a rule, there aren't any rules. Your goal is to stitch that bit of cloth down onto the background in a way that pleases you, both in the doing of it and the appearance of it. And so now I'm coming around towards the point. So as I come up towards the point, basically I'm going to take 3 stitches into the same hole about here. So I'm going to take my first, actually I need to take one more stitch up the side. So I'm going to come up kind of in the middle of that point, so that where my needle's coming out is 1/8 of an inch away from either side and 1/8 of an inch away from the tip. I'm getting super precise now, this is just the principle. Okay, so then I take my first stitch off to this right hand side, and then I bring my needle up and just only into the background cloth, but right on the tip of that leaf. Keep my arm out of the way so you can see. And then I bring this thread back over and I go down into the same hole that I came out of, into the leaf there. And then as I pull it through, I kind of hold the tip of the leaf flat with my thumb and gently guide the thread over it. And then I come up to the left of the leaf, about 1/8 of an inch down from the tip, and then I take my final stitch into that same hole. And then you've almost satin stitched the tip of the leaf, but it gives a really nice tip. And then you just turn around and carry on down the side in the normal way. Okay, so I've come back to the other end and I did exactly the same thing on the end of that leaf. I hope you can see that. So leave that thread attached because I need to do my other leaf. Just bring it up to the top so I can see where it is. So I'll park that ready for stitching that other leaf down. So that basically is it. I'm obviously going to put more here. I've got my little wonky hearts to put somewhere, but I'm just going to put them about wherever I feel like it. And I don't think I'm going to do it too densely. I do want to leave some plain space in between. So maybe I'll do a smaller flower here and maybe a slightly larger flower here and something here. So maybe like this much kind of room around is what I'll leave, and then if there are big gaps here and there I might just put a leaf or two. Okay, so that's my final placement, I think. It's all pinned or just laying there. So I'm going to go ahead and baste all that down and stitch it all on. And obviously that's going to take me quite some time. So that's it for this week basically. So I hope you enjoyed that. You can, like I said at the beginning, put your own spin on it if you like. I also cut some little really wonky freehand tiny flowers with just 2 little leaves at the side. You know, just have fun with it. This is a weird little 3 thing that looks weird now, but I think once it's got a middle on it, it will be nice. Oh, this one here, I overlapped them as I went round, and the last one I placed was this one, and I tucked it under the first one, just so all the overlaps lay. It's just a little thing. So yep, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch all that on. Using this overcast stitch. I may or may not mix it up and here and there maybe use the blanket stitch and maybe just use the running stitch like I said, but I'll try and get all that done this evening so that I can do a little handheld scan for you at the end of this video, so you can see it all stitched. But that's it for this week. Next week will be more embellishing and more stitching. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you like the theme for this month, and thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Lots of love, kisses, bye bye.